Mike Hazen and Torey Lovullo were recently locked up on brand new contract extensions. But are they the right duo to lead the next era of D-backs baseball?
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. I'm your always charismatic host, Millard Thomas. Please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com, to see all my latest work, from photos to videos, graphic design, articles, all of that. Check out my website. I've been doing the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast since 2020. Just saw the D-backs go on a Cinderella run all the way to the World Series, and now they're facing one of the biggest off seasons in their franchise history. And on today's podcast, we'll be doing a little game like we did on yesterday's pod of in or out, but this time with free agent third baseman. But before we get there, we first need to talk about Torey Lovullo and Mike Hazen, because Lovullo just got an extension that ties him up through 2026. Hazen recently got one before that ties him up, I think, through 2028. So those two are going to be around for the, at least the foreseeable future. And my big question is, are Torey Lovullo and Mike Hazen the right guys to lead this next generation of D-backs baseball? Because I believe this offseason and the upcoming season are big tests for me to see how those two dudes do, how they respond now that everyone is taking the D-backs seriously. It's easy to go out there and manage and acquire talent when your team is not expected to perform. When you have one of the lowest payrolls in Major League Baseball, the expectations, the pressure is just not there for you. People still last year saw the D-backs as that little team from Arizona, right? It wasn't until the D-backs got to basically the World Series for people to actually give the D-backs some respect. And even in the World Series, the D-backs were still disrespected. They were disrespected all of last season. But I think entering 2024, people finally have some respect for the D-backs because they earned some respect after that deep postseason run. And for Mike Hazen, I need to see what type of team he's going to build after seeing this franchise make it to the World Series. What is Mike Hazen going to do to get us back to another chance of winning it all? Are you going to sit on your hands this offseason if you're Hazen? Definitely don't want to see that. Are you going to get aggressive and take big swings on the Blake Snells and the Yamamotos of the world? Are you going to try and consolidate your farm system? Maybe acquire a star via trade or some pieces via trade? Or are you going to just do what the D-backs always do? Maybe add an above average player or two like they did this past season with the Evan Longorias of the world and the Lourdes Gurriels of the world, and then mix in some way too old veterans. I guess you guys said Evan Longoria is the way too old veteran there. Usually he likes to add in way too old relievers. So I need to see what Mike Hazen is going to do. This offseason is a big test to see how Hazen will maximize a young roster that we all say, quote unquote, is ahead of schedule, right? We keep talking on this podcast post-World Series. Yes, this D-backs team, young, so inexperienced, super, such a big surprise that this team got to the World Series, exceeded all expectations, but that doesn't mean you should just sit and rest on your laurels when you were in that situation. You need to maximize that opportunity that you had in the World Series. I think the D-backs did everything in their power to win the World Series. And now that you saw that team was able to get there, knowing that they had weaknesses, if you're Mike Hazen, you have to address those concerns this offseason. Coming off the World Series, the D-backs now have real expectations to at least expectations to hopefully be put in another position at a World Series title in 2024. That should be the D-backs expectation level entering this season, coming off the World Series. How do we put ourselves in position to get back to the World Series? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you need to have a season like the Phillies just had where you're one game away from the World Series. Obviously, if you're Philadelphia, 2 games at home to try and get to the World Series, you would want to win that game, at least one of those 2 games. But at least if you're Philadelphia, you put your team in another position, a strong position to get back to another World Series. That's what Mike Hazen has to do with the roster this offseason. He has to do everything in his power to put this team in position to win another World Series. Last year, you were catching everyone by surprise, both literally and figuratively, because D-backs were catching everyone by surprise by making all those comebacks, right? The answer backs, as we called them last year. But they also caught people by surprise because no one expected the D-backs to be as good as they were last year. No one expected them to be tied for the division lead at the All-Star break with the LA Dodgers at the, at the midway point of the season. And definitely no one expected that team to get to the World Series. So Mike Hazen has a big task in front of him to maximize this young roster and add pieces to this team, and maybe a major piece or two this offseason. And then for Lovullo, he's a manager that hasn't dealt with this level of pressure before either. How does he manage the egos of players in a winning environment when games are under more of a microscope? Players get a little bit more frazzled when the media gets a little bit more serious. They get more involved. This team's probably going to have a few more primetime games, being a few more ESPN articles. Like, people are going, the D-backs are going to be on people's radar next season. So how does Torey Lovullo respond to that? I've had my up and down relationship with, of course, both Mike Hazen and Torey Lovullo. With the approach and philosophy we saw from those two just this past season, makes me at least optimistic about the future. Last year, the D-backs didn't know they were going to the World Series, of course. They didn't build a team to go to the World Series. But from the very beginning of the year, the D-backs had always talked about urgency, trying to put the best product on the field. And it didn't immediately happen. But as the season went on, the D-backs did do that. They did trim the fat as the season went on. They cut players like Madison Bumgarner, who was a terrible signing from day one. They let go of franchise legends like Nick Ahmed, who is only a legend in Arizona. But you look at the leaderboards for D-backs franchise stats, he's like top 5 in everything because he was the longest tenured player the D-backs had, and they were not afraid to cut him before they even made it to the postseason. That's the kind of philosophy where I'm like, okay, I liked how the D-backs trimmed the fat as the season went on. And then they added a little seasoning to the dish that they were already cooking with the Tommy Phams and Paul Sewald at the deadline. I'm always going to have issues with Torey Lovullo's over reliance on analytics. There will definitely be a situation this season where a guy like Alek Thomas probably has like 7 hits and 2 home runs and 3 straight games. Lovullo would be like, you know what? There's a lefty on the mound tonight. I know you're 8 for your last 10 with 2 home runs in the last 3 games, but Thomas, there's a lefty on the mound and you're a lefty kid. I'm going to have to sit you tonight, son. That's definitely going to happen at least one time. Or Brandon Pfaadt, because he's young and he struggles that second, third time through the lineup, he could have a no-no through 5 innings and then surrender 1 walk in the 6th. And Lovullo's like, you're done. You're done for today, kid. That third time through the lineup, no, we got to sit you down. I'm still probably going to have issues with Torey Lovullo entering next season. I want Torey Lovullo to use more of his gut when he's watching the game. Don't always focus on the analytics. But I do got to say, I can't deny I love Torey Lovullo as the leader on this team. Torey is someone that wears his heart on his sleeve. I loved all the trash talking and the keeping of the receipts he had during the postseason run. Loved how emotional he was when it all ended. Like, I was crying myself to sleep watching those Lovullo pressers after the World Series, watching all the videos with him embracing his family, watching him not even able to finish a presser without like crying every 3 minutes. Like, I love how he wears his emotion and heart on his sleeve. From a locker room perspective, Torey is the kind of guy I would want to play for. And for Mike Hazen, I'm always going to question the trades or signing that he makes, especially when he likes to trade for guys and sign guys who probably shouldn't be in the majors. Like, why are we trading for Jace Peterson? But I do love how flexible Mike Hazen is. He changed his whole bullpen philosophy after struggling in that area for years. He was like, you know what? Let's actually go after high leverage, high velocity relievers. He became a savvy kind of GM when he traded Dalton Varsho, a very tough decision, and brought in Gabriel Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel. Made a super savvy pick with Corbin Carroll, a stud already for the Arizona Diamondbacks and probably our best player. So Mike Hazen does have some things working for him right now that I do like a lot. So there are some obvious issues that I have with these two, but at the end of the day, love these guys for their charisma. And I do believe both of them care about winning to their core, which is all you can want as a fan from both your GM and your manager. Now we'll be playing our little game of in or out, third baseman edition. But first, I need to talk to you guys about Jace Medical, because whether you're on extended travel, bracing for a major weather event, or limited by yet another supply shortage, you are covered, my friend. Thanks to our partners at Jace Medical, life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code locked on at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. I am thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year supply. I also ordered the antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. If you or someone you love would get some peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily medication, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use promo code locked on for $20 off your purchase. Let's get back into the Locked On. Whoa, that's not what I wanted to press. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for the personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks on both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you guys. So thank you. Please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. And of course, we're on all your streaming platforms. But now let's get back into the podcast. Let's play our little game of in or out free agent third baseman edition. I got 6 guys that I want to talk about today. 3 who I think would be clear upgrades, and then 3 that I think would probably be potential upgrades or depth pieces. We're going to be playing in or out with each guy. But for this exercise, the metric we are using is basically, will the third baseman be better than just the duo of Perdomo playing third base and Lawler at shortstop? For whoever the Dbacks signed to play third base, that has to be the question you ask yourself. Is this guy better than if I just moved Perdomo to third and gave Lawler, a full time at shortstop? Because for me, I don't know if Lawler is ready yet, right? From what we saw last year, Jordan Lawler's probably not ready. Could you throw him out there for 140, 150 games? Yeah, you can. We saw Perdomo, right, last season, 150 games and just looked bad offensively, but the D-backs still trot him out there every single day. Lawler could be the same type of offensive player for the D-backs that Perdomo was last year, probably with improved defense. But does that help this D-backs team that wants to get back to another World Series? That has to be the question they ask themselves. Whoever the D-backs sign has to be better than the combination of Lawler and Domo, because as much as I love Lawler, he probably isn't ready for the everyday role and probably needs to be in a little bit of a platoon rotation situation until he can get his legs under him and until he adjusts to major league hitting. But if Lawler comes out the gates hot, maybe Perdomo and Lawler is good enough for the left side of your infield. But let's actually talk about the free agent targets, because for third base, I'm not going to lie to you, the field isn't exactly strong. No superstars, no Rafael Devers on the market, no true superstar third baseman, but there are some players that can be better than the Evan Longoria, Emmanuel Rivera combination that the D-backs have thrown out there the last couple years. So let's talk about the first player, Candelario. And for me, he does get a yes on whether I would like to see him in Sedona Red. Projected 4 years, 70 million. Of course, all projections are courtesy of MLB Trade Rumors. That might be a little rich for my blood. For some of these free agents this year, they're going to be overpaid just because of the weak free agent class. Candelario is potentially one of those guys. If you want to say a con about Candelario, he's only considered a decent defender, league average at best. But from an offensive standpoint, he is above average. Candelario is no superstar, but he does have decent home run power, which the D-backs desperately need. The D-backs were one of the lower ranking home run hitting teams last season. So getting a guy with 20 potential home run power would be very effective. And also, hope you guys didn't hear my phone ring just now. And also, he is a double machine. So if he is only a 15 to 20 home run guy, he can at least supplement it with another 30 to 40 home runs, which I think it just really powerful for this D-backs team. When you talk about that speed, sometimes you don't always want the home runs. Sometimes you could build more momentum just with doubles and seeing dudes run around the bases. Sometimes that can be more demoralizing to the opposing team than if you just cranked a 2-run home run. So love Candelario. Also love that he's a switch hitter. We know Torey Lovullo loves himself some platoon situations, and so Candelario would be able to do that for Torey Lovullo, which I'm sure would make him so happy. Solid walk rate, average strikeout rate, like gets on base just enough, doesn't strike out a ton, which is great for this D-backs team because those were two strengths that the offense had last year. They got on base a lot via the walk and they didn't strike out a ton. Candelario can keep that going. And one thing that I loved about Candelario, super clutch last season. 900 OPS with runners in scoring position and over 1,000 OPS in high leverage moments. We need a third baseman that can give us some pop and be a middle of the lineup producer. And that is what Candelario can do. When you look at his numbers last year, really good, batting fourth, fifth in the lineup, solid power, double machine, clutch. I like Candelario. No superstar, but he would be a clear upgrade to what the D-backs are currently doing at third base. He's like the Lourdes Gurriel of third baseman. That's why I'm in on Candelario. Next up, I got Matt Chapman, who on D-backs Twitter, I've seen some mixed reviews on whether to bring in Matt Chapman or not. And for me, I would like to see a Matt Chapman. Now, it depends on the price tag and the years because MLB Trade Rumors is projecting 6 years, 150 million. That is way too long of a deal and way too much money. If it's 3 years, 50 million, okay, I could get behind that for a Matt Chapman. I think that would be a reasonable price tag that I wouldn't mind paying. Now, Matt Chapman is one of those free agents that could come back and bite me in the butt because he hasn't looked the same offensively since the 2020 season that got cut short due to injury. Maybe he isn't the same kind of player post surgery. We've seen his strikeout numbers spike a little bit. We've seen his slugging percentage take a dip. It's been down the last 3 seasons. But if you want to talk positive about Matt Chapman, he absolutely kills lefties, struggles a little bit against righties, but kills lefties, which the D-backs still need more power from the right side. He's still a good power guy overall, despite the slugging percentage going down. Still has 20 plus home run potential. Still hits a lot of home runs, or still hits a lot of doubles as well with the 20 home run potential. Very Candelario S there with more over the fence power. Elite defender, and still considered an above average offensive player by WRC plus. But if you do want to talk about another down for Matt Chapman, he was elite the first month last season, and then really struggled like the last 3 quarters of the season, to the tune of being dropped in the lineup in the batting order. And so for Matt Chapman, some of the numbers tell you he's in the decline. Numbers tell you he's not the same guy post surgery, entering his early 30s. Maybe this should be a stay away. But for some reason, I'm kind of encouraged that Matt Chapman could get back to the levels that we saw in Oakland, maybe at least 90% there, because when I look at his hard contact numbers, still very reminiscent of what we saw back in the Oakland days. And he's hitting more fly balls and less grounders than he did during that time period as well. So with more hard contact and lifting the ball a little bit more, maybe it leads to more doubles and home runs in the future. Don't know if that will raise his batting average or overall contact skills, but from an offensive standpoint, considering the D-backs need more right-handed power, I would like to bring in Matt Chapman. But this could be one that comes back, bites me in the butt. He could be a declining platoon defender, but I still think he's really good, and I do think he would be a clear upgrade. And also, he already has a house in Phoenix. I've seen all the breadcrumbs that I saw with the Evan Longoria house in Phoenix, loves Arizona during the offseason. So for Matt Chapman, I would not mind seeing that veteran come in the building for this Arizona Diamondbacks team. Now we'll talk about a few more potential free agent third base options. But first, welcome back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. Please go check out Locked On Diamondbacks on Twitter. Go give them a follow. Follow on Instagram as well. And if you want to follow the personal account, at CreatorThomas24 on Twitter. Of course, we're on all your podcasting platforms and on YouTube as well. Locked On Diamondbacks. So please hit subscribe everywhere you can. But now let's get back into the podcast. Let's talk about a few more third baseman free agents. Play a little game of yes or no, in or out. And the next guy, resounding yes, Justin Turner. Listen, he's old, projected 1 year, $16 million, but the dude is still a beast. And I think this is going to be the main third base target that the D-backs are going to try and go after, just based off the vibes and the reports. I think Turner is the guy the D-backs are going to target. They even targeted him, I think, last offseason as well before signing with the Boston Red Sox. So I think they're going to make another run at him. Now, the con for Justin Turner, 39 years old and can't play third base every day. So for a team looking for a third baseman, he could play 30 games, 40, 50 games maybe at third base, but he will definitely need to DH and play third base and platoon throughout the year. He can't play third base every day at his age, but he can at least manage it when you need him to. And I would like his bat in the lineup because he's still a 20 home run, good discipline, good contact still guy. Just last season, 96 ribbies, 800 OPS, and over 20 bombs. This is still a dude who's a stud offensive player with the bat. And I also love that he's a former Dodger. He knows the NL West, knows that former team, would love to bring him in the building. And of all the third basemen we're going to talk, I think I love his tangibles and intangibles the most. I think he probably has the best bat of any of these third basemen we're going to talk about. And I think he has the most moxie and the most bravado of all these third basemen, the most confidence. So Justin Turner gets a resounding yes for me, especially if it's like a 1 year, $15 million deal. Next player, Gio Urshela. For me, it's a yes. I know, not sexy, and I wouldn't be happy if this was the only move because I don't know if that's a clear upgrade, but I do kind of like the idea of the Gio, Perdomo, Lawler rotation. I kind of like the idea of all three of those together. I think Gio could be kind of like the perfect bridge player until Jordan Lawler is ready to take over shortstop and be the everyday shortstop of the future like every D-backs fan wants. Gio has really good contact skills, solid defender, We've seen when he's fully healthy at his best, 15 to 20 home run pop. I just think he's overall a pretty good, honestly, underrated player. Again, not sexy, not going to make headlines, but in the perfect world, if he's healthy and having a bounce back season, because the concern for Gio Urshela coming off a season ending surgery that cut his season short, don't know how he's going to bounce back off that. But if Gio Urshela gets back to the level we saw the beginning of last season and what we saw with the New York Yankees, like he can definitely be as good as a Candelario or a Matt Chapman, I think, from an offensive standpoint. Be 85 to, I think, could be 80 to 90% of what those guys give you for maybe half or a third of the price tag. So I like Gio Urshela a lot. I like Gio Urshela a lot. That was a little bit of a tongue twister. He also puts the ball in play a lot, which I like because it leads to a low walk rate, a low strikeout rate. Well, I don't know if the low walk rate is good, but he has a low walk rate and strikeout rate because he puts the ball in play a lot. And I like that he puts the ball in play a lot because this is a D-backs team that wants to live off of chaos and moving runners over. So a guy like Gio, who you at least know if you have runners on, he's not going to just strike out at the plate. He's not going to just do nothing. He's at least going to put the ball in play. That's all you can ask for. So I would like a Gio on maybe like a little 2-year deal. I know it wouldn't be a major splash, but I do think this would be a little bit of an upgrade for third base for at least the short-term future. Next up, Donovan Solano. For me, this is a no. I know he's a big NL West guy, been around the block in the division, very versatile defender, can play all over the infield, but I just don't think he offers much more offensive upside than even a Geraldo Perdomo, right? Probably a better pure hitter than Perdomo, but at least Perdomo has some wheels, 16 stolen bases, came through in the clutch last season. Like, you just look at the traditional offensive numbers like Solano, good average, but no slugging, no power, no speed. I just don't think he's much more than a singles guy, and we need a lot more power than that. Also, in his mid 30s, he's like 35, 36. Like, I want someone that is a clear upgrade or someone that I think can be a good bridge for Lawler, but still provide production in the short term. And I just don't think Solano can do that. Despite being another NL West guy, I'm out on Donovan Solano. Then the final guy that I want to discuss, you guys are going to love this name. Former friend of the Arizona Diamondbacks, Eduardo Escobar, and he's a no, but I wouldn't be against it. Love Escobar, love Fogo power, but he might be cooked, unfortunately. Coming off a really bad season where he was a negative offensive player, just couldn't hit the ball last year in his mid 30s. Now, if you want to look for a silver lining, only 2 years removed from the All-Star campaign with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Last year had 20 home runs, so you still think the power potential is within Eduardo Escobar, but his best days just might be behind him. Would still love to bring him in as a locker room guy, but expecting him to be an impact bat just might be too much. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news covered and insight. We'll probably be doing more free agent talk as we're doing all week on the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast because it's the offseason, and who doesn't love to talk about free agency during the offseason? And of course, if the Dbacks make any signings, we'll be here to discuss. So come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage insight. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.